What is natural selection? Natural selection is a theory that proposes organisms with inherited traits favorable for their environment have higher chance of producing offspring. This theory was proposed by a naturalist called Charles Darwin. Now, some of you might be wondering, how on earth did Charles Darwin come up with such a radical theory like natural selection? Well, it began in the 18th century. Darwin joined an expedition around the world on the ship HMS Beagle as a naturalist for the crew. On his journey, Darwin collected many specimens native to the local islands of the Galapagos region. Whilst he collected these specimens, he noticed that a particular species of birds native to the island, called finches, was similar to the finches of the mainland, England, but each expressed different characteristics that helped it survive in its native habitat. Now, moving on. During his journey, he collected many specimens and recorded all the different traits and characteristics in a notebook. So after he recorded all these, he returned to England and started publishing a book called Origin of Species, which set forth his ideals about the evolution and natural selection. This book, The Origin of Species, consisted of two main theories. One, how diverse groups of animals can evolve from one or few common ancestors. And number two, the mechanism by which evolution takes place is natural selection. This book explained a lot of theories proposed by Darwin. This book became the basis and foundation of natural selection and what it is today. So, back to natural selection. How does it actually work? Well, natural selection has four main points. Population has variations. What does that mean? It means that animals of the same species might not have the same traits or characteristics. Some giraffes might have longer necks than others. Some birds might have faster or longer wings than others. Moving on, some variations are more favorable than others. As an example, giraffes with longer necks can reach higher and get food easier, which promotes a higher chance of success in reproducing. Organisms with favorable traits to their environment have higher chance of survival and reproduction. These organisms also produce offspring with favorable traits, which also have a higher chance of surviving and reproducing. So, now that we have an idea about natural selection, we can expand into the evolution of virus. So, viruses undergo evolution and natural selection just like all cell-based life. Even though they're technically not classified as a living cell, they still undergo evolution and natural selection. So, how do viruses go through natural selection or evolution? They evolve. That is, traits of a virus can change over time. Some viruses will inherit traits that promote survival and help them reproduce. These traits that help them reproduce will gradually become more and more common until an entire virus population may change. So now we're going to expand a bit more about whether natural selection actually happens to viruses. And do viruses actually evolve? Well, different viruses have identical genomes. Scientists have discovered that viruses of different categories, for example, a plant virus or an animal virus, may have the similar genome. And a virus has similar genomes to that of its host. What could this mean? As cited, this genetic similarity may reflect the persistence of groups of viral genes that were favored by natural selection during the early evolutions of both viruses and the eukaryotic cells that serve as their hosts. So, for example, right now, a common virus like the flu. The flu has similar genomes to that of humans. So, scientists theorize that back a few centuries ago, viruses infected humans. but humans didn't die from the virus. So, these viral genomes remained dormant in the human genome. So, as generations and generations passed, current human genome contains traces of virus genomes. What can this mean? This means that viruses and humans share a common ancestor, which promotes the theory of natural selection. So, how do viruses actually evolve? Well, viruses have high mutation rates. This high mutation rate, combined with natural selection, allows viruses to quickly adapt to the changes in their host environment. In addition, most viruses provide many offspring, so any mutated gene can be passed on to many offspring quickly. Although the chances of mutation and evolution can change depending on the type of virus, viruses overall have a high chance of mutation, which can lead to viruses evolving and producing offspring containing different strands of the virus rapidly. This means, for example, vaccines. The same vaccine cannot be used to treat a similar virus of that of a previous year. For example, last year, you can use a certain vaccine to treat, for example, the flu, but now you've used a new vaccine to treat a new strain of flu. So this is the reason why you have to take a flu shot almost every 1 to 2 years. So how do viruses actually mutate? We're going to use a bit of scientific knowledge to explain. There are two types of viruses, DNA virus and RNA virus. So DNA viruses copy their genetic material using enzymes from the host cell called DNA polymerase, which proofread meaning catch and fixes mistakes as they go. During viral replication, any incorrect change in the replication of nitrogenous base will be corrected. However, RNA viruses instead use an enzyme called RNA polymerase, which is the opposite. It doesn't proofread, and so any changes in the nitrogenous base will remain fixed, and thus make mutations. Because RNA viruses have a high mutation rate, there will be a lot of genetic variations in the populations of viruses in patient's body. Many of the mutations will be harmful to the host, and the mutant virus will simply die, failure to reproduce. However, some mutations help the viruses produce under specific conditions. For instance, a mutation might provide resistance to a drug. So, how do viruses evolve? Another point is viruses can inherit new traits. Through the process of recombination, viruses swap chunks of genetic material, DNA or RNA base. So, as quoted, viral recombination occurs when viruses of two different parent strains co-infect the same host cell and interact during replication to generate virus progeny that have some genes from both parents. Furthermore, similar regions of virus genomes can pair up and exchange pieces, physically breaking and reconnecting the DNA or RNA. Second, viruses with different segments can swap some of the segments, a process called reassortment. So, how does reassortment actually work? Well, here's an example. You have two different viruses here, human influenza virus and bird influenza virus. They have different genomes. But when two different viruses, human influenza virus and bird influenza virus, co-infect the same host cell, for example a pig cell, different flu strains will mix together and produce offspring that contain different genomes, each from each parent. For example, here you have an offspring with genomes from human influenza and bird influenza. So now I will pass my mic to Song Xian. He will give an example of evolution of virus using COVID-19, also called the coronavirus.